Last year I read the first book in this series, The Black Arts. On my tier list of books I read, I rated it, it's really good. So it's time to talk about the sequel. The book is written by Andrew Prentice and Jonathan Whale back in 2016. It's the sequel to the book The Black Arts, written back in 2009, and later in 2013 it was added to the Brantford Bowes Award shortlist. As of 5th September 2021, the book stands at a 3.84 out of 5 on Goodreads. For the first time, I want to try something a bit differently. I want to have an entire section dedicated to the cover of the book. This book, luckily, only got one cover, the one you can see on the screen, and therefore it is also the version I own. For future reviews, if a book has more than one cover, like Black Arts, I will talk from the edition and cover I own, not the first published. Talking about the cover, I am happy to see we aren't just looking at a dude with a sword or something similar. The cover utilizes a lot of red and orange, drawing attention to the typical colors of Christian depiction of hell. This is strengthened by having a burning demon made of what looks like brimstone right above the text. The text itself is white with an orange and black outline. The text has also been given a slightly shining treatment, so it stands out more. In the bottom behind the text we see a city, which you can only assume is London, since the first book only took place in London, and if you are from there, you can probably recognize what bridge it is. Sadly, I must say I have no clue, but looks good. The entire front of the book isn't plastered with quotes from reviews or logos or anything like it. It's a picture with some text and it works. I think it's a really good cover. It stands out from many other books that tend to use the more dull colors or minimalistic art style. Not that those things are bad, I just don't think it fits that many books. Finally, I want to talk about the demon in the book in contrast to the story. I don't think the demon is representative of the story. I think the cover sets up the big bad guy as being more than he is. In my opinion, they should have gone with a picture of Sargastus, since he plays a major role. I am aware it's supposed to be Beelzebub, and with the insects around the demon and all, but I think it sells the book the wrong way. Anyways, enough about the cover. Let's quickly go through the plot, and then talk about what I think of the story. The book starts off with some time after the first one, where we learn that our main characters Jack, Beth, Kid, and Imp has lost most of the money and run an old tavern where they barely get any customers. To save this, Kid has a brilliant idea to steal a demon artifact, to use this to turn their tavern more popular. The story then follows as they steal a little red bead that contains the satyr demon Sargastus. Sargastus then almost kills Jack, but after Beth and Dr. D saves him, he now has a little black speck on his hand. Don't worry, it'll become quite popular later. When Jack and Beth comes back after having thrown the key Jack got from Blood in the previous book away, they find the tavern is now full of people. This leads to a pretty funny sequence where they party and almost lose control. They then find out it was Kid who has stolen the bead that almost killed Jack and placed it in the basement. When they go down to remove it, because it's super dangerous, they find the key from Blood in the door. Beth is then sucked into the door opening and disappears. Jack and Kid follow suit shortly thereafter. Now skipping ahead, Jack thinks Kid has been killed by a Frenchman and learns that they traveled 200 years into the future. He is placed in an asylum where he sees a woman whose eyes are insects, the swarm of Beelzebub. He saves her by sticking the swarm into his red arm, and black area grows a little, and his body becomes numb in the black area. They, Jack and the woman Ada, then try to escape until they end up in the theater, where they see Beth is playing the main role. Jack hurries down to talk to her, where he learns that she has been in the future for 200 years or something like that. Skipping ahead some more, Jack and Kid try to save Beth and get the key to work so they can come back to their own time. They learn that Tom D, descendant of Dr. D and Ravenscar, has been serving some alcoholic drink called Spiritus, made from the devils living in London. Ravenscar holds a party, and Jack and Kid sneaks in to steal the red bead with Sargastus. Here the final drama ends out where Jack and Beth manage to stop the swarm, return to their own timeline with Imp and Kid too. I won't spoil how all that plays out because it's quite a funny scene, except for one little detail, but I'll get to that. The book is a non-stop action from start to finish. There aren't many scenes where something isn't going on. They seem to be how both Prentice and Whale writes, since it was the same in the first book. I think it fits the book. It doesn't feel like it's going too fast or anything like that. I think the pacing of the book is quite consistent all the way through, and that worked out great for it. In the first book, a lot of time was dedicated to world building and explaining the universe. Here we get nearly nothing. They managed to write a sequel where expanding the world isn't needed in the traditional sense. You see, they have a time travel, so I first have to explain how that works. And it's a bit of a weak point, but it manages and it works for the story. In the world, demons don't perceive time. For them, it either happens now or not at all. This is all fine and dandy, but it doesn't explain anything, cause what happens to the periods where whatever they wait for isn't happening? Well, they rest or sleep, which means they must perceive time. I want to make it clear that time travel is a really dangerous subject to work with. Very few books have made it work. See, like H.G. Wells' The Time Machine for my opinion, a great example for where it works. The world building they do here is fine. It isn't anything great. London 200 years later doesn't feel different. But at the same time, it feels different, but not at all. That's where I'm trying to go for. It could have been 100 years or 50 years, and the city could have changed the same-ish. The devil in this book is the fear of Beelzebub's swarm, since Jack can see how they crawl on everybody and drives people insane. He also gets the power to suck the insects out of people's bodies and into his own, and make his arm more and more numb and black. Fine story, but how it ends, we'll get to that. I love Sargastus. I think he is so much fun, and in the beginning I thought he was going to be the main antagonist, but he just wants to party, and can you fault him for that? He just wants to have some good old-fashioned fun. Alright, heavy spoilers for the incoming, and if you want to skip, then skip to the timestamp on the screen now. So 3, 2, 1, spoiler. The ending with Beth and Jack defeating the swarm from Beth's body just by resisting it seemed a bit weak to me. I'd have liked if Jack had sucked it all into his body and then maybe his entire arm was useless. I did like the twist with Tom D and his madness, thinking he was bringing light into the world when it was one of the biggest evils in Christendom. Ravenscar's sacrifice was fine. It didn't seem to be completely in his character to do so. I think they should have killed Tom before he sacrificed himself to a swarm and let Ravenscar die. The final escape was a true love's kiss. I really didn't like that. I thought it was Princess and Vale having written themselves into a corner and didn't know how to end the book. I would have preferred if Sargastus had given them access to go home. Maybe because he had never had such an amazing party as he had at that club or whatever. And then a third book in their own time where they must stop Beelzebub because he still has his swarm in Jack's arm. I think the ending would have been much better, and it would lend itself very naturally to a third book, because the entire book feels like it was just a prequel to a third book, where he would have this epic Beelzebub versus Jack and the gang thing going. To end this review, let's summarize it a bit. I like the pacing, I like the humor, I like the characters. I think Sargastus is an amazing demon and would totally want more stories with him. I think the ending was weak, and it felt a bit like they didn't know how to end the story. All the way through, I felt like this is leading up to an epic final book. See how Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince leads up to the Deathly Hallows. Before the final 4 chapters, this book was a clear 8 out of 10. Very entertaining, high-paced. It's down by like 5 or 6 out of 10. Still good, but it sadly did drop the ball at the end.